Okay, so I know some of you have already been in the platform, some of you have may not been. So very, very brief overview as well. The platform that we're using, Engage Gettysburg, actually came about. We started researching different student engagement platforms about a year ago. And this was largely because we were constantly hearing from students and campus in general that there wasn't a lot that was really centralized. And so when people were trying to find events that were going on throughout campus, some may be on the digest, some were solely talked about within an individual group, some may have been sent out in an email if you were in that email alias, things like that. But a lot of times you didn't know what was happening kind of across the board. Similarly, our student org registration process was partially through Google Forms, partially through other things. We just had a lot of different resources that were in different locations rather than centralized. And so the big goal for when we started looking at platforms was to find a tool that could kind of bring a lot of these things into one place and integrate with systems that we already have. So we did research on a number of different ones, submitted a proposal, which was actually approved at the end of December last year. I say all of this to explain that although the tool really helps us with a lot of things during COVID time period, such as helping with some of these virtual events, helping with letting people know what's going on, whether they are on campus, studying remotely, etc. This was not specifically for that reason. So just a nice added benefit, but especially knowing a lot of you, like many faculty and staff throughout campus, maybe learning new platforms for in the classroom and things like that. This was not an intention to just have another thing for you to learn, just happened to be a resource that was already on the docket to work towards that happened to kind of overlap with one another. But going in, the platform itself is called Engage Gettysburg. So we tried to keep it simple with the website is engage.gettysburg.edu. So the first time that you log in, it will ask you to submit some of your interests and things like that. That's all to just create a profile for things like the directory, which allows you to connect with others who may share your same interests. So you can do things like looking up, clicking an interest, seeing who else has that one. It's been great for if you're trying to find a new advisor, something like that. You also can click the suggested for you and it'll give recommendations of others that you share things in common with. I do want to note, kind of going off what I was saying a minute ago, we recognize that this fall has a lot of new platforms that are being put in place, especially for our faculty and staff who have to learn a lot more of the intricacies to be running the pieces through it. And so we made the decision to have this fall really focus on bringing our students into the platform. So we will be doing more education pieces for faculty and staff in the future, and any are welcome to reach out to me right now and we're happy to do trainings with them. But we are really starting our attention with students. So that may, for example, mean that as a student organization, you may have, as you reach out to your advisor or something, they may not fully know what this is. We've posted about it in the digest, but we know, just as with students, not everyone reads the digest all the time, especially during busy times of the year. So just want to give you some of that little bit of information before we get started. But in order to put in any events, you do have to first be a registered student organization. So an individual is not able to put in an event. That's always been true, same with our 25 Live process, but continues to be true within this platform. So if you have a organization that already exists that you just need to register, at the top, I clicked on groups, all groups, and then I can search for the name of the organization and then just click to start the group registration process. If it is a fully new organization, you'll click up here to register a new student org. Okay. Once your group, one thing I also do want to note, because this has come up a few times, please make sure when you submit your constitution that it's in line with the resource that we have on our website. And there is a link to that in the registration process that has some specific things that we need included, such as there shall be no hazing, voting membership is restricted, there'll be no basically discrimination in membership. Some of these pieces where it explicitly says include the following statement. There's a few groups that have been held up a little bit because those pieces weren't included in their constitution initially. And as I noted, in order for you to reserve spaces, you do have to be an approved organization. So just want to note that although it feels separate, they are connected for that reason. So when you're creating an event, you can click on events up here. There are two ways to start an event. Both are going to the same place, but just a different location that you're getting it from. When you click create event, it'll pull up the groups that your officers for. Once again, you can also only create a group for one that you are an officer in. So a general member can't create an event on behalf of their group. Something to be cognizant as you assign officers within the organization. But when they click the group that they are in, there'll be a little thing up here that says, click this link to create your event. And this will take you to 25 Live. You can also access 25 Live through the current events page, midway down 25 Live event portal. Ultimately, our goal is to have all of the event pieces all in this one platform. However, right now, 25 Live had actually come out with a lot of new features recognizing the unique time that we're in. And so we decided it made more sense to have it go between the two platforms. And so I'm going to show you what that all looks like. But when you click this link, it'll take you to 25 Live. If you don't currently have an account, you can reach out to, once this pulls up, I apologize, my internet is a little slow today. It'll have in the top corner for you to sign in. It'll also tell you when you click on that, if you don't have an account, that you can email calendar@gettysburg.edu. We're actually working on this being single sign-on. That should be happening within the next week or so. Single sign-on means just as it is for Engage Gettysburg or Moodle or a lot of your other pieces, you're using one login information for all of those. So your normal Gettysburg login information, you'll be able to use to log into these platforms. But if you put in an event today, recognizing that event scheduling opens for student orgs today, if you don't already have an account, you can send an email to calendar@gettysburg.edu to get one created for you nice and quickly. But then you'll click create an event, pop up. One of the big things I'm going to recommend is, and this is true anytime, try as best as you can to put in the events once you know what it's going to be. So especially recognizing that we never know what any time period looks like, but especially this fall, looking even as simply as our office was going to be putting on an outdoor movie tonight. Due to rain, we now had to change the title of the event. We had to update description. We had to reach out to those who had registered already to let them know that we're going to move that outdoor movie night to another weekend because they're anticipating rain tonight, and they would be switching to a Netflix party. Obviously, you do need to put some things in advance. Right now, it is a 3-day time frame for putting in advance. After next Friday, it'll go back to the normal 5-day time frame. That's to give enough time for it to be reviewed by the scheduler in case there are any problems or questions. If you're doing something where we're going to talk through, there's a couple scenarios where there'll be an additional form for you to fill out. All of that just gives time for that to happen. But same piece, if you're still figuring out, let's say you haven't actually met with your group yet, maybe don't schedule out your entire semester of meetings quite yet. Maybe schedule the first 2, double check with everyone that those work, and then schedule the rest rather than having to change them. But event name, this is what's going to show as the event title. Description can be if you have a little bit more that you want to put. There is a shorter, the event name up here is a little bit shorter, so if you have a longer name, you can put that here. Event type. So when you first log in, you're just going to see all of these just listed out. If there's ones you use more often, you can click it to favorite it, and it'll show up at the top. The main ones most of you will likely be using are meetings or rehearsals, private, calendar, social event, calendar, or private. So meetings are exactly that. It's if it is an executive board meeting or your organization meeting, something like that. Whereas social event is if you're putting on an event. So for my office, for example, the Office of Student Activities and Greek Life, we may be having a meeting, could be hosting the Student Senate meeting, let's say. Whereas our social event, maybe that we're running a paint night. Okay, so one is a meeting, one is an event. Private means it's limited to select group of people, usually the members of that organization, whereas calendar means you want it to be open to the community to be able to sign up for. For this fall, due to all of our event procedures, things like that, we are not doing any things that are open to the general public because our visitor policy is saying that we don't really want guests coming to campus, just to try to really protect the safety of the community. Cub table, we are still going to be offering tables. They're going to be outside of Plank where the banners are normally hung, where there could be educational based tabling. We're going to be having a different process for solicitation or sales, and information about that will be coming out soon because we actually have some new features that'll be coming out in Engage Gettysburg. They'll actually help any of your fundraising or sales processes to be that much easier. So you'll pick whatever it is. If you're who the primary organization is, and this is why it has to come from a group, but you put in what group it is. So I'm just picking random ones right now. I'm not actually going to submit this one. How many people you expect to have. Please be very thoughtful with this because we do have different processes this year in place, not major, but we do have different things in place for depending on the size of the group. Because, for example, if you're having more than 25 people meet, we have to have more considerations because right now the PA governor has limited us to, for indoor locations, a max of 25 people. Some of our spaces are going to have a lower occupancy rate because of us needing to maintain those social distancing pieces. So if you have more than 25, we're going to ask you to share a plan with us on how you're ensuring safety, various things like that. So please be accurate with this estimation. We understand maybe off by a few here or there, but if you know this is a major event you usually do, don't put that it's going to have 20 people and then have 60 people show up. Event description, any information you want to share. This can also be if it's a virtual event where you can put the Zoom link or whatever it is. Event date and time, you'll put that in. If it is going to be a reoccurring one, you can then also click for every day that it's going to repeat. Important note with reoccurring is it has to be the exact same. So if one day the meeting is from 4 to 5 on, let's say, Saturday, but then on Monday it's going to be from 7 to 9, you have to do those as separate events because it's going to keep that same 4 to 5 for everything that you click. And then we're going to go to locations. There are still on-campus locations. You'll also notice that these spaces have been updated for what occupancy now is. And so a lot of these numbers are a lot smaller than what you may be used to. For example, Cub 260 now has a number of 32. However, you may remember me saying a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago, PA's guidance right now is we can only have a max of 25 indoors in a space. The 32 is because classes have an exemption, and so they're able to go purely based on a social distancing number, so allowing for that 6-foot distance between everyone, whereas for non-academic events, it is at 25. So please recognize that even if the room says that it can hold, for example, 108, if it is not directly an academic class or dining, it can only be the 25 within that room. One other piece that's new is there is also a virtual space option, and that's if you're going to be doing something that's through Zoom or something like that. Okay. You really don't get to touch the requester, the scheduler, or anything like that. And then make sure we help you out with rights and things like that. And then if you have any notes. So the notes can also include if you are going to be having, if it's gonna be a hybrid event instead, for example, or something like that. One other piece I do want to note is this year, we are requiring groups to register every event that they are doing in every meeting, because it's going to allow for us to do more with contact tracing and ensuring student safety, everyone's safety in the community. So if, for example, if you're going to be meeting outside, let's say, so you have your 5 exec board members who are just going to want to find somewhere outdoors to sit, you can reserve campus. So camp is the name or title campus and request that. If you select this, we do ask in the notes to scheduler that you just put where you're hoping to meet. We recognize that, for example, you may say like Stein Lake is where we're planning for, and then you may actually get their day of and there's a ton of people there and you're not gonna be able to socially distance, and so you pick somewhere else. That's okay, but we wanna have an idea of where you're planning, especially if you're doing a larger group, so that way we can know where we anticipate finding you. If it is a large event, outdoors or something like that, then please reserve the actual location. So Stein Lake, for example, or whatever else. If it's a smaller group gathering, we understand, especially when the weather's nicer, you may just wanna be outside. And so campus is an option for that. Are there any questions on this piece? Once you're done, you'll go all the way down, click I agree to these affirmations, and then you'll be able to hit save. But starting with the 25 live piece, are there any questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to go back to Engage Gettysburg. So once your event is, once you've submitted your event, if it had if it did have that you were going to be anticipating over 25 people, or you were looking to sell things, so doing the solicitation, you'll get an email from usually Kathy Zarella, asking you to complete a form with a little bit of additional information. Regardless, once all of the steps are done, she or whoever the scheduler is will send you an email saying your event has now been scheduled. Give it 15 to 30 minutes just so that it has time to fully go from 25 Live into this platform. But then you'll be able to just go to events and you can see all the upcoming events. You can then type in the name of the event, or you can go to your group and click the specific group and you can see all of your upcoming. You also can do this directly through your groups page. If you click on your group, where you then can click on events and it'll show all of your upcoming events in one spot as well. So a few different options to get to the same place. But then you have two options, editing and managing. So starting with editing, you'll notice that some of these are specifically locked. I also want to note, description is not locked. However, that one is still going to be overwritten by whatever is in 25 Live. So if you do have a change to your description, such as your Zoom link, make sure you do that in 25 Live. Okay? But you can say who's the coordinator of the event. It should automatically pull for who put in the reservation, but your main contact may change or something like that. Team members, I'm going to talk about in a moment, attendance tracking, but you can also add team members who are able to help with checking people in. Scrolling down, you can also add a photo, for example. So right now, if you look at upcoming events, there will be some, let me go into the full list of events. You'll notice that a lot have this General Gettysburg College. That is the generic one that is set if nothing else is set. Others you'll see have a photo that was specifically added to it. And then others are going to be kind of repeated, but a more general design. This general design comes from, if I go into the group, and if any of your student org leaders, some of this will be addressed at the meeting on Tuesday that's specifically about student organizations, but in the group page, the cover photo. So for Panhellenic, for their events, their template will be this middle piece, which is why you see they were intentional of having that be kind of its own standalone part as well. So just a thing for you to be aware of. I first had it where for student activities, I had it written out going across this whole way, and then it cropped itself to only be the A and the G. So just giving you some kind of information in advance. But you can also change the photo to be something relevant to that specific event. You can have, if you have a flyer or anything like that, you can also add that piece in. And then going down to access and display, you can note who's allowed to register and who can see the event. I want to make it clear, everyone means everyone in the world. So someone in North Dakota who has no connection to Gettysburg College, if they happen to somehow stumble upon the Engage Gettysburg website, would be able to see the event on the event calendar if you have it as everyone. Whereas on the other hand, if you have it as the Gettysburg College users only, that's only going to be faculty, staff, and students from Gettysburg College. You may also want it to be only for your group members, especially if it's a private event. If it's a private event, that's how it'll automatically start, is group members only. And then who can see this event? No one means you're going to hide it from the calendar, logged on users only, group members only, things like that. And then display on the upcoming event slider, that's going to be that piece on the main page where it has these ones that are just going to scroll through. So whether if you want it to be on there. Okay. So those are some of the main pieces of this. Other ones, we're working in having these switch to being automatically set as not to send unless you update it, but I want to specifically highlight these just in case. Reminder, make sure this box is not checked, because this is sending a reminder email to someone 2 days, 1 day, whatever before the event. That makes sense if this is a really major event that you're having people sign up for far in advance. But we all know once someone gets too many emails, they start just ignoring them. And so we want to make sure we're not sending unnecessary ones. Okay. Similarly, feedback request, make sure that this box isn't checked unless it's absolutely necessary, because this will send out a message to people afterwards to ask them to give their feedback on the event. For a general meeting that you're doing or something like that, you likely don't need that. And the more people get emails or messages like that, the less likely they are to fill it out when it really is needed. So they should be automatically set to be not checked, We're double checking that because we just made some few tweaks to the site yesterday, but we're going to be getting it back to being like that. But I do want to just note it just to be safe, because I know some people like to go through and just click every box. So I'd rather give you some information about what that means. You can also decide things of like, should your list of attendees be visible to anyone? Should people be able to post comments about the event? It can be things like, hey, I'm so excited, or if they have questions or whatever else. You can choose whether or not those pieces are visible. We recognize, especially for student orgs, that there might be a lot of difference between different organizations. Some may want everything to be public, whereas others may want to be more protective of their membership and of their resources or things like that. And so the nice thing with this platform is you have a lot of ability to decide what's visible to whom and different things like that. Okay. So you can also, so then attendance tracking is the next piece I'm going to go into. Are there any questions on any of these pieces so far before I go into attendance? Okay. So going into it, we're going to be having resource documents that'll be right underneath this button. That'll give you direct information about, we'll give you a reminder, this video will be posted there, things like that, if you're suddenly looking back and you completely forgot half of the things I told you. So we're not expecting you to have everything memorized. Please always feel free to reach out to myself or Lauren Browning, who is our engagement resource coordinator, if you do have questions and need help. But going into the attendance piece, this year, we are requiring, as I mentioned, that all events are registered, but also that attendance is taken at the events. So that way, if unfortunately, let's say, someone does test positive for COVID, we can very easily help with the contact tracing with knowing who may have come into exposure. Once again, our main goal at all times, especially this year, is really looking at safety. So as we're looking at this for the attendance, one of the big ones you'll likely want to keep checked is activate RSVP at the door. What this means is that if someone doesn't register for the event ahead of time, they can check in day of, and that'll just automatically register them for the event. Okay. So most of you probably won't use the multiple check-ins or the self-checkout. If you do have an event where you want them to check in at the beginning and check out at the end, you can activate the self-checkout and the multiple check-ins. Multiple meaning that they'll check in and check out, or if there's multiple registration options. Check-in notification would send them an email saying you were checked in successfully. Once again, likely not necessary for many of your events, but a potential tool. I also will note, right now I'm not talking about this too much, so I'm going to readdress this in the fall or the spring whenever things are potentially looking like they may go back to quote unquote normal. You are also going to be able to do things like ticket sales through this if you have a large event, or if you have, for example, if Ski Club is taking students to go to Ski Liberty and they need to have people, they have a limited number of tickets available and they are going to be $5 tickets each. You'll actually be able to do this directly through this platform, and so you'll be able to check people in with their tickets through this as well. So I'm not going to go through too much detail on how to do that right now, just because it's more than likely not going to be a consideration for most, if really any, groups this year. If it does come up that that's something that'd be useful for you this fall, please let me know and I'm happy to go through it with you then. But scrolling down, I just switched the check-in method to be that swipe, scan ID cards, or enter name or email, and I'm going to show you all that in just a second. Okay. So once you had any updates you wanted in this, and you may not have any updates you need, in which case you can skip the editing. I just want to show you all these pieces in case there were things that you'd want to update. The other piece, going back into events in a second, is going to be the manage button. And so right now I'm in manage. And so you can get to manage in a couple of different ways. You either can, if you're an officer in the group that's sponsoring it, you can click on the event directly. You can also click on the settings button, either or, and it'll take you to this page. And this will let you see, for example, who's registered as attending for who's registered for attending the event. I want to make very clear, you'll notice here that this reservation, $0. That's the base. We're not going to assign a cost or something like that unless you explicitly have put that in as a piece. But you'll notice for these various things that it'll have where you can register for the event. Many of you did this before for this event that you're currently at or for this call. It'll let us know how many people are coming. It allows us to reach out to you. So for example, when we just had to update the Onward movie piece, I was able to then send out an email to those who have already said that they wanted to go to make sure that they knew that it had changed to doing a Netflix party instead. But so those can just be little resources with that. Also, other quick note, you also can actually connect your Outlook calendar directly to this platform. So it can also then come to your email, your Outlook calendar and your email. If you have your phone connected to your email as well, it can come to that. So you also can just have a very quick reminder or be able to see very easily what events you have coming up. All of that, once you register, you can have those automatically come over. But for the actual checking in, there's a few different ways that you can check someone in. I'm actually going to stop impersonating Kristen and I'm going to go into actually the Lorax event. Just to show you a little more because this one does have attendees. Whoop, click the wrong button. Back to list. Sorry about that. Go into this one. Events. For some reason, it's taking a second to load and not yet showing me the event. Okay, it's being weird right now. I have no idea why. Let me go back a second. We just updated this event, and so that is likely why it is having that moment of change. But this. I think we had it under office student activities. I also apologize, as noted, my internet is being very funky, which is likely also not helping pieces. But, okay, we'll go into this one instead, the one we're currently in. Okay, so if I go into the manage, you'll also notice that this one says live because it's currently during the time frame that the event is set to be occurring. So just a little note. So things I can do. If people have already signed up to have attended, I can then mark off, I can just click check-in to say that they attended. I can also click track attendance. Many of you likely experienced before where you were having it where you would swipe your ID card when you came into an event. That still works. We do still have ID card scanners along with residential and first year programs that ID cards can be swiped. You also can search for someone by name and email and check them in that way as well. Other tool, so where I can scan it or I can type in someone's name. So for example, I know Lauren's on this call, so I'm going to use her as an example. I can click on Lauren and check her in that way. I also can track attendance by doing self check-in using a QR code. So one thing that's currently in process, we actually have an Android app already. So if you have an Android phone, you can go to the Google Play Store or whatever else and search for Engage Gettysburg. Apple users, I apologize. We submitted this a while ago. They're still finalizing their approval of it. So we will hopefully have that within the next week. But within the app, you can actually click and you can scan a QR code. If you have a QR code scanner separately, you can use it, or you can also go to the little link that's on here and you can click that to sign in yourself. But a cool thing with the self check-in piece is you can scan the QR code, but if you ever have an event where you specifically need the person to be there, you can also click refresh QR code every 10 seconds. And then every 10 seconds, this will change. So if you have it where you're just going to, for example, pull this up on your projector screen or something, so as people are coming into the event, they can check themselves in, completely fine. You don't necessarily need to have the refreshing happening. If you have it, and this might be more relevant to some other areas, let's say if there was a Title IX presentation going on, we may need to actually know who was actually in the room and we don't want to risk someone having screenshotted this and sending it to their friends and people checking in that way. We may want this 10-second piece to happen where 10 seconds later, that QR code's no longer valid and a new one has already popped itself up. So all little tools that can exist as well to really make checking in easy. So as I noted, 3 different options where you can add it in yourself. You can have it where if someone has RSVP'd, you can click the check-in button. You can also add or invite attendees here. And so I can say, okay, I'm gonna use Lauren again, just because I know she's here. Lauren is add her to the registration list and also mark her as checked in right now. So this would be if you had people at the door who were doing something. This could also be if you were doing ticket sales where you had different RSVP options, one being a $10 ticket, one being a $5 ticket, whatever else. You could also choose which one it would be right here at that same time. You can also use this to invite attendees by email or by mobile push notification if they do have the app downloaded, or to just check in attendees. I know that was a lot of information. Any question on that? One other thing that might be helpful with an event as well, especially if you are doing an indoor event, as I noted, we do know that this year occupancy numbers for spaces are lower and you are held to those. So it might be a case where if you've reserved a space and it can hold 20 people, let's say, with that reminder, once again, if it's above 25, you are still right now held to 25 per PA governance. You can actually set an attendance limit. And so this will say, okay, we cannot have more than this number register. Same might be true for Zoom. If you have a really large organization or know a lot of people may want to join this, even if you have the pro account, you might be limited to the 200 people or something like that. And so you might still want to set that as a limit just to make sure you don't have more people join or like sign up than will actually be able to join. So those are all of the main event pieces. Hopefully not too complicated or anything like that. Within the events, people can very easily look at upcoming events, past events. Once you've registered for one and it's passed, it'll show up in, or once you register for one, it'll show up in either my upcoming events or my past events. You can look based on an organization, by the group type, by the type of event it is. We're working on having over here a virtual one where for especially our students who are studying remotely, they can easily click on that and then it'll show for them all virtual events, but they can also use the event type and choose virtual there as well. But yeah, so those are just some of the features that are currently existing with the platform. But if there are other things that you have questions on or things that you think would be helpful, anything like that, always feel free to reach out to me. If you hit the support button as well, I'm the person who gets the email. So you can also send me things that way as well. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment to turn my video back on and things like that. And that way, if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask. Are there any questions right now? Awesome. If you do have any questions, please let me know. Once again, just that reminder that student groups are now able to start registering events. Once again, the reminder of right now, you can register for an event 3 days out. So that would be for Tuesday, second day of classes. We wanted first day to be for people to just focus on going to their class. And then on next Friday, it'll go back to being the 5-day out restriction. And so making sure you're planning out your events a little bit more. We do recognize that that is going to be a lot of work for a lot of groups, knowing that especially exec meetings or something like that often kind of just happened organically. We are asking you to do a little bit more planning and forethought with those pieces, just so you can make sure you're getting those registered, because as noted, all meetings, all events do need to be registered this year. One other thing that's going to be going onto the homepage, and we'll also be sending an email out about this, is, sorry, apparently cannot do 2 things at once anymore, is that we do have information about all of these different event processes. And so that's going to be, there'll be a link directly to this on the homepage of the Engage Gettysburg site. I'm actually in the process of putting that on, so it'll be on in the next probably 20 minutes or so. But it has some of those things in there, such as the reminders of maintaining that 6-foot distance. Masks do need to be worn, including if you're outdoors for your meeting or things like that. And so just making sure that all of those pieces are being met. If you're part of an organization that is more likely to struggle with some of these pieces, so especially our performance-based groups or our athletic groups, you'll also likely receive an email from me with one offering to meet, and that's true for any of you. I'm always happy to set up a meeting if you want to talk and brainstorm through how can your organization operate well this year, how can you tweak events to make it align with all of the different event protocols, whatever else. I am more than happy to meet and discuss, or if you have questions about Engage Gettysburg that might be more specific to your group, happy to go through any of those things. And I do want to also remind you, the Tuesday meeting that Lauren will be running specifically on student organization pieces will also have some resources around, once again, how to decide what information is public and what information isn't. So for example, you can have it that your membership for your organization is viewable by anyone, or is closed where not even members can see who the other members are. Knowing that we have different groups that might have different needs and things like that, especially as it relates to privacy. But, so I'll link to the campus events. They'll have all of those resources. But if no one has any other questions, thank you all for taking some time out of your Saturday to go through this. Please feel free to reach out to me once again with any questions, if there's any ways I can help you or be a resource or anything like that. Otherwise, I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.